Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I'm Gary, your host. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. A couple weeks ago, I showed some of the books from a couple of my shelves which had collapsed, and I just thought I'd show some of them to you. And one of them was this book here, The Marvel Comics Art of Wally Wood, and a few. I was planning on covering this book anyway, but a couple of commenters expressed an interest in seeing more of this book. And that's what we're going to do. But first off, let me show you this Bizarre Brain Comics Anthology. My first comic book here is available if you want it. And I would truly appreciate it if you would go to Amazon, type in Bizarre Brain Comics or my name, Gary Nelson, and followed by comics, and it will come right up. And you can buy it for $7.99 or on Kindle, and that will really do a lot to help me in the production of this channel and bring the comic book stuff that you like to the internet. Thank you. Now here we have the Marvel Comics Art of Wally Wood. I've talked about Wally Wood several times before. Got his bio, but I'll review a little bit. Of course, Wally Wood was from 1927 to 1981. And so he was only in his early mid-50s when we lost him. He did some work with Will Eisner on The Spirit, mostly backgrounds and the like. And he is best known for his work at EC Comics, because he was one of the seminal artists there and doing primarily science fiction. And he's great with the science fiction stuff like Weird Science, Weird Fantasy, etc. and Mad Magazine. He was a Marvel artist for a while on early Daredevil, and I've shown a couple of his work here, and he created the Thunder Agents for Tower Comics, which I've also showed you here, and at various times he's worked at Warren Publishing on some horror stuff there for the horror magazines, and he was early into self-publishing in the 60s with his Wits End magazine, and he did various stuff for men's magazines, such as the very sexy Sally Forth and the very violent Canon. As a writer, he was influenced a lot by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is seen in his fantasy, which will show up here, and especially in his magnum opus, The Wizard King trilogy, which I hope to eventually show you something of here. And he worked a lot at DC in the 70s, and he committed suicide in 1981 because of severe illness and other problems. And this book came out in 1982, so it was put together shortly after his death. And here this cover design, and it has Wally Wood himself here with some of this stuff. Now, this is not cover his better known stuff like his Daredevil and the like, because he did a lot of inking for both Marvel and DC, and some penciling as well. all through the 70s, as well as doing his own material. And some of the stuff he did at Marvel, which was put in the anthology horror comics, he also wrote. Now, let's see what we have on the back. Yeah, another one of his drawings. And yeah, he was great at doing fantasy. His a lot of the fantasy stuff that he wrote, the shorter stories, through the 60s and 70s, had little snippets that were put together and was seen again in his Wizard King trilogy. And but he was great at doing this stuff, and it's kind of surprising that we never saw him do Conan the Barbarian while he was at Marvel. However, he did ink the very first issue of Kull the Conqueror, which was penciled by Marie Severin, and it really reflected his look on that. And he participated in pencils and or inks in several other sword and sorcery titles through the 70s, none of which lasted very long. But you might wonder what Conan the Barbarian would have looked like had Wally Wood ever drawn him. And I can tell you what he would have looked like right here. This is from one of the stories in here. But that is what his version of Conan the Barbarian would have looked like. And there is splash page on here. Doctor Doom. And here we have the first story is Flight into Terror, which this is where the cover illustration came from. And I'll bet you this is pretty much what his studio would have looked like, except of course, see the window up here, which indicates he's working in a dungeon. That's funny. This is and these are fantasy stories. This is one he wrote as a handicapped kid. Winds up being transported to some other world, in which where he is a giant. He is healed by the healer there, and he becomes a hero, saving the people from an evil wizard, and then is transported. Here's the castle collapsing, defeating the wizard, and he is then transported back to his own world, thinking it was all a dream, except now he can walk without the crutches, and no one notices that the gargoyle that he had been sleeping on is a different gargoyle than the one he'd been on before. Here we have the Ghost Beast, another fantasy. This barbarian character fighting this Ghost Beast, and here you see that figure that I showed you on the back cover. He is, but he's not necessarily a nice fellow here, but he's engaged to destroy this ghost beast, which is wreaking havoc. The character's name is Beowulf, and it is slightly inspired by the actual Beowulf saga. And then he defeats the beast, but discovers that he had to be a ghost to do it, and he had accidentally sacrificed himself to destroy the beast. And his sanctuary, this brutal king, and he has savaging everyone, then has nightmares of things going to happen to him, so he builds a castle, an impenetrable castle that no one can get into, but with the aid of a wizard. And it turns out he defeats himself because he has locked himself in with the evil that he was the horrors that he was trying to get away from. And this is the story I like best of swords and sorcery, and this is very much Tolkien inspired in some ways. Here we have a little band of travelers and warriors fighting. Here it looks like some kind of orcs, as Vandal the Barbarian, Pip Pitt, the elf, and Trollkin, the little lizard guy. And they're going through and trying to fight against this evil wizard in this valley, who is turning the people into stone statues. Here they meet the princess here, and she knows how to get into his castle. She helps them. They help him. They split up, and looks like Trollkin's done for when this horrid vulture creature gets him, and Vandal is alone while Pitt and the girl are taking another route, dangerous route. And they are confronted by the evil wizard, who turns them into stone statues. Then there's the hero Vandal, and he gets turned into stone too, while Pitt manages to get away from the bird, gets into the castle, and when he tries to turn him into stone, it ricochets. The enchantment ricochets back, turning himself into stone. He falls and smashes, and at his death, everyone is turned back into reality, to their flesh. And here they find out that the reason is because that Trollkin was already under an enchantment, and it reflected back on him. Then the rest of it is composed of a really great. Now, all those stories Wally Wood wrote himself, but here we get a story of Dr. Doom, written by Roy Thomas, and the later parts by Larry Lieber. And this is about a rebellion in Latveria. There's no Fantastic Four or anything like that, and has got robots. Yeah, the rebellion is led by the true heir to the throne, who had been forced to abdicate to Doom. And in the process, we have some robots, and this one they call the Doomsman is a very sophisticated android, which in the battle got away on his own, and even the rebels are being manipulated. Here's supposed to be the rebel leader is actually a robot, so there's robots all over the place, and they're being manipulated by this person here, the Faceless One. And meanwhile, the Doomsman is fighting. Sees how powerful he is, fighting Doom's forces, and it's I really like this story. And eventually, the Doomsman comes back under control of Doom, and helps him defeat the rebels, even though his castle is destroyed in the process. The Doomsman, because he had turned against Doom, is teleported to another dimension, and then Doom is engaged in reconstructing his destroyed castle that he lost during the rebellion. And that is a brief look into the Marvel Comics art of Wally Wood. Thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment. Do you like these Wally Wood stories? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for joining me. And remember, comics, especially done by Wally Wood, are art.